Hello, it's Deanna here from Key to Music. I am going to talk to you about how to make your guitar practice work phenomenally well. And it's just a week of short sessions. It's going to be 15 minutes. You can stay a little bit longer. But the idea is you get a little bit of help with some things that you want to play. And you are able to get some feedback on questions that you might have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I can see questions you might have. So I'm going to just enable the YouTube chat thing, live chat. Here we go. I'm going to say hi in the chat. There we go. Okay, so the topic for today is something that's a bit abstract but very powerful to your actual results with guitar playing, and that is myelination. So what that means, myelin is like a coating around your muscles, and it helps your muscles fire and know what to do. So basically, if you imagine a tree and you've got all these different tree rings, you've got nerves and muscles, and around the nerves you have this myelin coating. Every time you repeat an action in the same way, the myelin coating gets a bit thicker. So anything that you experience as being quite effortless to do, any action that you can do quite effortlessly, like pouring a jug of water or driving a car, you've done it, you basically had enough repetitions that there's a lot of myelin coating around the nerves that are needed for that particular action. And when you want them to fire, they do so without you really having to think about it. So, but I'm sure you might remember not being able to drive. You might remember not being able to do those types of things. And you might remember with guitar, there's going to be things that you found really tough to begin with. So a good way to remind yourself how difficult things felt like at the start, if you've been playing for a while, is to try and flip your guitar around the other way to play a chord. Now, if I try and play a chord the other way around, I've been playing guitar for probably more than 25 years. If I try and flip it around and do this, I got precisely no myelin on that side. I know this isn't going to make a chord sound right anyway, but even if I could flip the fingers around, there isn't very much strength, there isn't much coordination. I would have a really hard time making even one chord with the other hand, because I don't have any of those pathways. And yet doing it here, it is completely effortless at this point. So what does this mean for you? Basically, what it means is that every time you make a repetition of something to do with guitar, so whether you're learning a new chord or a new piece of lead guitar vocab, or whether you're practicing a transition, or whether you're learning a song, or whether you're adding sing to the song, every time you do that, it's getting encoded. So if you do, let's say, 2 minutes worth of repetitions of something, and half the time you do it with one fingering or one type of picking, and the other half of the time you do it with a slightly different one, you've now kind of created two sets of signals for your brain. And both of them, neither one is really dominant. So if you had done those same number of repetitions, but you had done the exact same way every single time, you'd have one dominant pathway for that movement. So there's two implications for this for guitar practice and for kind of being able to a point where you can do things effortlessly. One of them is that if you don't repeat things the exact same way, it takes longer. So it's better to do a shorter amount of time really concentrating and really doing it the exact same way than to do quite a lot that's casual. Once you've dialed something in and your hands will go to the same place, then it's not such a big deal if you do it in a casual way. But when you're learning a new fingering for a new scale, it costs your brain an awful lot of energy. That's right, it feels very tiring. And our brains always instinctively slightly fight things that feel very tiring. But and that's why it's really good to restrict the amount of time you're going to do it for. So your brain wants to save you energy. If something feels like it's taking loads of brain power, your brain is automatically going to try and reduce the energy expenditure by finding an easier way to do it or switching some of your attention off. And you have to really fight against that. But it's tiring, and you can't really, my sort of outside ability to work in that way is about 3 minutes. So 2 to 3 minutes, that's as much as your brain can really deal with being that intense about working on something very deliberately. So that's myelination. You got these. It's the difference between, if you imagine walking down a path that's been cleared versus hacking through the forest. You can go much quicker down a path that's been cleared than trying to play a new pattern for the first time. It's like you're hacking a branch, you're putting this finger, you're putting that finger, you're putting the other finger. So what you want to do is grab something that you're working on, and it could be a new chord, or it could be a fill, it could be a section of a solo, and we're going to look at it from a point of view of this myelin pathways thing. So that means that we're going to play it really slow, and we're going to just spend a couple of minutes, and I'm going to set a timer. We're just going to spend a couple of minutes, and we're going to go incredibly slowly. But when I say slowly, I don't mean we're not going to move at all. I just mean that we're going to be moving in slow motion. And it is quite boring doing this, or it's not exactly boring, it's just that it takes a lot of effort. So let's imagine that I am learning a new arpeggio for the first time, and or it could be, it's going to be a chord shapes. It's a new chord progression that I don't know very well, and actually this is one of the intro to a song that Mary chose, and it's got these three chords. So if I wanted to be able to get to a point where I could play these in a cool bossa rhythm that song has, I'm not gonna completely stop. I'm gonna look down at my left hand. I'm gonna remove as much tension as I possibly can. I'm just gonna use the amount of tension I need. I'm gonna deliberately relax my shoulders and arms before making the movement. And I'm gonna press down, make the movement, and then I'm gonna move to the next chord. I haven't stopped in between. I'm just moving slowly. Oops, that wasn't quite right. That's it. Don't want to get that. Don't want to dial that in wrong. And then I'm going to move to the next one. I'm going to relax, and I'm going to push down, and I'm going to come back to the first one. I'm going slowly, but I'm not coming to a full stop. And then this is where I made a mistake before. So I want to make sure that I'm not making a mistake there, because I don't want to get the wrong pathway in. And I'm really relaxing in between pressing down. So I don't want to learn to practice something, or I don't want to train my body to play something with excess tension, because if I then want to add in singing, it's going to be very difficult. So here we go. That's almost too fast. You almost want to be doing it even slower than that. And now, there's not yet. See, that actually went quite quickly. However boring or hard work something is, you can do it for 2 minutes. So now I'm going to imagine that I've got a arpeggio or something. I'm going to have, let's say that I've got a, I'm going to take this melody from Rodrigo and Gabriela Tamakun, which is a nice melody based around arpeggios. And this is the kind of thing where you might, if I just play it without even thinking, I've got a little bit of a habit of having a lot of tension in my pinky. This is really, really common. So if I'm not concentrating and I don't look down, I can sort of feel that's wobbling around a little bit. So, and this is a great example of something that, you might spend a bunch of time in your room looking at your guitar going, and you practice it to the point where it sounds really good. Let's say you wanted to go and perform it. You would really want it to be consistent. How is it going to be consistent? Loads of myelin. How are you going to get loads of myelin? By playing it very, in a very precise way. So what I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to swap guitars, because this is something that is more electric, more suited to that. Actually, he plays it on a nylon string, but I'm going to play it on this electric guitar. So, you also want to make sure while you're working this way that your setup is as good as possible. So you want to make sure your leg raised, or you're standing up, so the guitar's at 45 degrees. So I'm going to go back to that position there. I'm just going to, I'm going to make all those movements in slow motion. So I'm going to make sure that my fingers are in the right place, but I'm not going to stop in between because I don't actually want to, I don't want to train myself to play it jerkily. So I'm going to go. So there's at no point is this hand completely stopping. And it just allows me to really notice where there's tension in my body. The goal isn't to play with no tension. It's to be aware of it and to start building the capacity to notice and relax. It might not seem like a big deal when you're playing by yourself. You've got a gig and you've got lots of songs and you also want to sing when you're playing. You want to be able to regulate tension and release it often, and you've got to train your body to do that. Otherwise, from personal experience, what happens is your arm or forearm just gets tenser and tenser and tenser until eventually it's very hard not to make a mistake. So I actually didn't get my timer going, but that's what to do now. If you've got any kind of fill or there's a solo you're working on, make sure you know what the actual notation means and you're fairly confident about that. And then give yourself 2 minutes where you're repeating it and just experience every part of the movement, from pushing down on the string, picking, releasing. You can make sure that you release the finger gently. So rather than letting it fly off and having tension in the rebound, make sure it just kind of, you allow yourself time for it to release. And all this time my left hand is moving gradually. I'm not coming to a full stop. And this is really going to get you a lot of... This is really about closing the gap when you know something and you can pretty much play it and you want it to be consistent for performance. Because that's the point where we can be inclined towards working, just doing lots and lots of repetitions with a metronome, gradually getting a little bit faster, or maybe playing it really fast and fluently after we've spent half an hour working on that particular section. But that can be the point where you sort of feel like, okay, I kind of, my ability to play this has gone up, but now it's sort of like this. And when I get out there and I want to play it with somebody else, or I want to make sure that I do play it at the best of my ability. So at that point, continuing to just churn out repetitions isn't really all that helpful. That's when it's time to look into more of the detail of hand tension and all the micro aspects of the movement and the synchronization between the two hands. Now, the first time you start thinking about all of this, it can seem A, pretty dull, and B, pretty abstract. I promise you it is worth it. It makes an enormous difference. You could spend months kind of hacking away with a metronome and your improvement would be more haphazard than if you invested a bit of time training your body's micro movements in this way. So guitar, it's a sort of fine motor control thing. I'm completely uncool. I've got no natural high-level coordination at all. I was like, 10th minus 10th to be chosen for any sports team that involved catching or throwing. So if I can do this, anyone can. But because it's, whenever we start with something that's a fine motor skill, we use much more muscle tension than is needed. So, and because we haven't developed the right coordination, so all of the muscles in that area are firing. And that's why if you watch somebody who's never picked up a guitar before, put a C chord down, it's kind of like the whole arm is tense, clamping that in there, squeezing as hard as you possibly can. Once you've learned what's needed, yeah, there's still some pressing, but you're not using as much muscle force as you would use in the beginning. But we can help that along a little bit more. So I'm just going to check the comments in case anyone has got some particular questions. Feel free to post if you are not sure what you should be doing now. Basically, summary, day 1 practice sprint. Part of understanding how to work on finishing something Or even if you're starting on it and you want to just, this is not something that only works when you're nearly finished, but especially when you're closing the gap between, I can pretty much play this, but I really want to give myself the best possible chance to play it confidently every single time in a performance type of context. This is how you get out of the thing of feeling like you have to spend hours and hours hacking away with a metronome, and then seeing quite inconsistent results. Like, you can get something to a certain point and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. So I am not at all the fastest, shreddiest guitar player I know by any means, but there's something that I've learned how to do by applying these principles that very few other people do, which is sing while playing lead guitar lines. So I don't improvise while I'm singing because that would be too many things happening at the same time, but I do play riffs. And actually, it's just the same thing. It's just that my body is getting used to what it needs to do, and it's memorized the movements, and now it can do both of those things at the same time. I'm not especially coordinated. I'm not I'm not the kind of like fastest shredder on the planet when it comes to lead guitar playing, but other guitarists are typically quite surprised when they see that, because it's not done that often. But the reason it's not done that often is that people that like to sing often haven't necessarily gone into quite this much detail with guitar technique. So they haven't tried to do it, or it hadn't occurred to them to try to do it. It's not that it's particularly difficult. And for anyone who wants to access like a really wide range of possible sounds just with one person and a guitar, this is a really nice extension of something. And I definitely was helped in being able to do that stuff by applying some of this myelination tension control thing. Okay, so which chords are you playing in the start? I'm going to send them to you, Mary, because they were what I figured out for your chosen piece, which also, in terms of the question that you had, was, I think, for a rhythm. I'm going to send you a bossa to try. I'm going to show you. Wait a minute. Can I show you? Yeah. Basically, my recommendation for that is to learn a bossa rhythm and learn those chords. Use this exact same technique with a. Actually, I don't know if it's Mary Lee, but it says Lee M, so I think it might be. Use this same thing of kind of gently squeezing and unsqueezing your hands, especially if you haven't played for a while and your fingertips might be a bit sore. If you've got a 15-20 minute half-hour practice window, it's quite boring doing the same thing all the way through, so segmenting it into slightly different things will help you retain concentration and will help you get the most out of your time. A bit like if you did a workout and you did the same workout every day, there would come a point where it'd be insufferably boring doing the same exercises, and also your body would adapt and you would no longer derive the same benefits. So it's funny, for someone who is as like a dedicated unsporty person as a child, although I've slightly modified my position now, the amount of stuff to do with the guitar that turns out to be comparable to coordination and skill development in sport is kind of amazing. So I'm going to send you that just now, Mary. I'm going to leave it there in terms of content for today, but please do that just now on your guitars, and I will also check the Facebook in case there's any questions there. I'll see you tomorrow. Good job turning up.